I'm Judd Danby, and welcome back for part 2 of our pre-show video series for our November 9th, 2023 Convo's Artists, the Kronos Quartet. The first video focused on the deep history behind the string quartet as an ensemble and as a musical genre. And we heard David Harrington speak about what that means to him and the members of Kronos. The second video also takes an historical slant, another glance back, but this time squarely at the history of the quartet itself, of Kronos Quartet. Founded 50 years ago in response to David Harrington's encounter with George Crumb's Black Angels, a remarkable piece that expanded the sonic possibilities of the quartet. And you'll hear Harrington describe his initial reactions to that encounter, but I was also curious about the ensemble's relationship to that formative piece as they progressed further into the existence of the group. And in fact, it took some time for them to record the piece, which also had me curious, and you'll hear him address that, as well as the issue of how he and the quartet thinks about the counterpoint between pieces in assembling their concert programs and arranging their recording projects.
Now you had this is of course very well known to any of us who know the history of Kronos, but obviously a very, very formative moment for you was encountering George Crumb's Black Angels. A slightly different sound world than Beethoven Opus 127, I think it's fair to say. But for the sake of our audience, could you speak a little bit about just how riveting that was and galvanizing for you?
Well, yes, this was August of 1973, and on the radio late at night, all of a sudden this music just grabbed me. And, you know, for people my age, the war in Vietnam had been a very damaging, devastating, horrifying event. And as a young musician, I was trying to find music that felt like it somehow responded to that, or there was a feeling of, I was looking for a feeling of music relating to this world that we were all sharing, and all of a sudden there it was, you know. And one of the great things about Black Angels that to me is as relevant right now as it was when I first heard it is the way it brings the world of music together, not only sonically with, you know, the bowed crystal glasses, which is called God music, the opening Night of Electric Insects, which brings to mind the world of Jimi Hendrix. And then there's the Schubert quote, and then there's early music, and there's all sorts of different ways to make sound. And you know, it's eternally interesting, that piece. And we just played it recently again, and will occasionally this 50th year. It feels as kind of involved in our world right now as it did 50 years ago for me.
I can hear that. Absolutely. If I If I'm not mistaken, was it right around 1990 when you first recorded that piece?
Yes, we recorded it in 1989, actually.
89,
Came
okay.
out, I think, in 1990. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Why that delay? Since it was such a formative force behind you, I'm just sort of curious.
Well, the delay had to do with there were a lot of things to learn, actually.
Ah, yeah.
Uh, how to use the recording studio as a musical instrument.
Ah,
Because you have to realize that Black Angels is for amplified, electrified string quartet.
right, of course.
And so we needed a lot of experience, and we wanted to go from that kind of electric, um, completely almost noise kind of sound to the um, Schubert and the early music, and
Hmm.
so there were a lot of things we needed to learn. But the bigger issue was I always knew that on our recording of Black Angels would have to be first piece. And of course, in those days, an album was something you curated and you composed
Yes.
an album.
Yes, you did.
And so for me, the big problem, knowing that was Black Angels was going to start the album, what's going to happen next?
Uh-huh.
And it took me a long time to figure that one out. And
Interesting.
it was on a flight. We were somewhere in the United States going to somewhere else in the United States. Suddenly I had a memory of being about 13 or 14 years old and being at my grandmother's home in Portland, and she had a recording of Thomas Tallis's 40-part motet.
Oh,
And
yes.
we listened to that piece together several times, and it was a magical, beautiful experience. And suddenly I realized on that flight I was mentioning, you know, I think Kronos could record all 40 parts of the quartet, and that's what should be track number 2. So when I finally figured that out, then it was clear what the album needed to be. I already knew we were going to have Shostakovich
Uh-huh.
on Marta and Charles Ives, but when we got the uh, Thomas Tallis figured out, then it was clear to me. So
Okay.
that took those years to do that.
Oh, that's great. And the Talus is the last, is that correct on the recording?
No, it's the second
Oh,
track.
it's the second. It's right after. So
Yeah, so it goes Black Angels, then
that's right. That's right. You lose some of these things if you use Spotify.
I know you.
Um,
I know you.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so was there I don't know, just speak a little bit more to sort of precisely the counterpoint between those two pieces. Were you imagining the Talus as in some way antidote is a silly over the top word, but as a sort of a balm or
I wasn't thinking of it as a balm. I was thinking of it as a place, and you know, and the place for me was this large vaulted musical space that got inhabited by this very old piece,
hmm,
and voices became our instrumental
Nice.
instruments,
Nice.
basically.